Good morning, everybody. It is 9 a.m. on a Wednesday. You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Jane Monreal. We thank you for joining us every morning here on the stream and downloading the app. Roku, Fire, and Apple TVs, where you can find us, or let your friends and family know that we are on the stream, and anybody at any time can watch us here. Pretty much. We're just about 24/7. Almost there. But right now we're taking a look at some of our weather around the Charlotte Metro. Carowinds looking pretty nice out there. Little cloud cover. And for that, you know, it might be a good time to go there for the park. Maybe celebrate a birthday for a 3-year-old. Chris Mulcahy.
That was hyper-specific. Why haven't I already said that?
In the Live Impact studio now. And little JT, had a good time this weekend.
Sure
long
did.
weekend. Welcome back.
We went on Monday, and that's when little lad turned 3. And
Oh, the little lad.
it was 98 degrees.
Wow.
It was nice. Luckily, they have water parks there, so that made things so much better, you know?
Oh, yeah.
So good. Yeah, keeping cool, because especially now we need to keep cool. It is pretty intense out there with this heat.
Yeah, and we're going to have a break from the heat, technically. We're still going to have a real feel that's close to about that 100-degree mark, but it is going to be a little bit better. I have a high of 93 for today. But now we are shifting our focus, a different weather alert. It comes with many different faces. Could be heat. We've even had it before for code red air quality, but this time it's a double duo, and all these are storm-driven. We're talking about severe storms. We have a low to a medium threat across the area. That's mainly for damaging winds, but then also number 2, moved it to a color orange there for flooding as well, mainly flash flooding. And that has been primarily the biggest story across the United States, from what happens to the tragedy in Texas. I was actually just as a quick note, I actually just was looking at the river gauges along the Guadalupe River around, is it Kerrville? Kerrville? Okay.
Yeah.
I want to say you were saying that right. It went from 1.84 feet to over 34 feet from 6 a.m. until 7:45.
So fast.
So fast. And you oftentimes don't realize that, hey, you could have a lot of rain in one area, but rivers, you could have a lot of rain in multiple different spots. It has to flow down. So as it's flowing down, it's picking up the heavier rain from upstream, and then that flows, and then that can compound there, and then debris can block channels, and then that starts to overcome its banks. And that's kind of the compound there. And I'm not saying that we're going to see anything like that in the short term, but I'll never forget when I was there as a live reporter for the Hidden Night Campground. That happened back in November. There was the flash flood watches that were in effect beforehand for the amount of rain that we saw, and they built. The more rain that you see in the days before, the more runoff that there can be. Now, good news for us, we've been fairly dry, but the reason why we're going to go weather alert really over the coming days, and here I'll bring up actually the extended forecast to really show you the magnitude, is because of that flood threat. I think especially the rain that we see today could be compounded in tomorrow, and if some areas see 2 to 4 inches of rain today and they do it again tomorrow, then you're looking at an issue. And we don't need any more flooding. I'm hoping for the best case in scenario, but we are looking at some decently heavy rain across the area, so that's one thing that we're tracking. But I do want to make this point before we go into your full futurecast. If you receive a flash flood warning on your phone, that means that it's a considerable flash flood warning. We have general flash flood warnings all the time. That just means that, hey, water's rapidly rising, over 6 inches in many areas. That means it could be some localized flooding, some nuisance flooding. When you receive an alert on your phone, tier 2 of 3, that means that it's considerable, life-threatening, and threatening your property. Doesn't mean that necessarily it's at your house, but someone in your little GIS, the global coordinates nearby, is under that considerable flash flood warning. So you gotta take those ones seriously if you're being alerted on your phones. And the worst case scenario is the flash flood emergency. And we saw a bunch of those, over a dozen from Helene. We saw one in Union County and Chesterfield County back in Florence, kind of keep putting this in perspective. And what happened in Texas, they were under a flash flood emergency. But the problem with these, if you don't have your cell phone, as many girls might have been at a camp, might have not have got them. So, but if you do have your cell phone, likely here in the Charlotte area, I'm hoping you do not get alerted anytime over the next couple of days, but we are alert that this could be a possibility. So I just want to get that out of the way, kind of some housekeeping before we fully get into your forecast, because boy, do we have an interesting setup, because check it out. We have a slow-moving pattern. We've talked about the stationary front time in and time again, and that can just squiggle and wiggle around, as my nickname goes, quasi-stationary front.
That's right.
That is going to be the case and scenario really by day 2 especially, but we're driving up a lot of moisture. Today actually could have just as hot of a heat index as we had yesterday or the day before, but we're 5 degrees cooler because the moisture is much higher for the afternoon. So that's one thing. Number 2, because of how hot and humid it is and a nearby front to lift things up, we have a scattered severe thunderstorm chance for today and tomorrow before it starts to drop off on Friday. There's the slightest chance that you don't really have much going on, that we might end the weather alert for your Friday, the way things are trending. But as of right now, we're going to keep it in there, because if you have a couple of days of flash floods, and even one small thunderstorm could be all the case on Friday. Again, I don't think you're going to see anything like you saw in New Mexico and in Texas. I'm sure you guys will show the house floating down the river at one point.
Oh, yeah, that was a An amazing wild video of that house.
And that was from flash flood warnings the day before, and then you got more rain in the same areas that just allowed everything to swell up. And we constantly been saying this. Helene would not have been Helene if you didn't have the predecessor rain event. There was already rivers that were at major flood stage before Helene hit, and then it moved to historical. So the more rain you have the days preceding is the better chance. That's why Charlotte is in a really good spot here. Yes, we do have a medium threat for flash flooding or flooding in general, but we would be under a high to extreme if we've been seeing rain for days, but that hasn't been the case. Here's a look at our futurecast. It's right about 3 o'clock that I think we really start to see things starting to take over up in the mountains and the foothills. There are some signs that you could see a storm as early as 2 o'clock across Charlotte. That's a lower chance, but it's still there, so anytime in the afternoon anything goes. But a lot of us might be waiting until the evening to see these storms, and look what happens. Everything kind of conjoins together. I think if you're going to see a severe thunderstorm warning, it's mainly in the mid-afternoon to the early evening. If you're going to see any flash flood warnings, there's a higher chance late afternoon through the evening, because this is 7 o'clock. At this point, you could see a couple hours of rain, in this case and scenario, sitting in one spot, because these aren't moving too much. I think they might move at 10 to 15 miles per hour, and then oftentimes you have a storm that needs to exhaust itself, but then when it's constantly kind of feeding itself into one big mass, they can sit even longer, and that's kind of what's happening here. Eventually it fades out and we'll have a chance for some more isolated nature, but it's really the continuous hours of rain that will up your flooding potential. So that's day one. Day two, I think it's really between about 3 and 9 that we see this, seeing it really starting to flourish west of I-77 by about 4 to 5. We see the same thing, things kind of combine together. It's called clusters of storms by the early evening, and by 9 o'clock most of it's out of here. And then for your Friday here, I'll stop things. You don't really have too much. You're only seeing a couple of storms. So this is the reason why I say we might end the weather alert a day early, but it just depends, because if we're looking at if you get a lot of flooding, sometimes they can actually aid more storms, like drought feeds drought. Sometimes heavy rain can feed heavy rain, just depending. So that's a look at the near term. Let's go through some of the rain totals. Now, the 7-day outlook that we have a little bit closer to home, surprisingly, isn't really that high. It's not really picking up on the exact near term, and sometimes it takes a second for this to load up. But we're seeing some values about 1 to 2 inches of rain that could possibly happen here. We'll just move on because it's taking too long.
Got stuck.
Yeah, it got stuck. Well, because it loads data from the National Weather Service. It's called a KML file. So sometimes it doesn't do it as quick, especially when I'm kind of on a subcomputer logged into another computer.
Right.
But let's see. Let's try to bring up the rain totals. There we go. All right, so this one right here, not showing as much, but it still has through tomorrow afternoon upwards, check that out, about 2 to 3 inches of rain over in Wadesboro across a couple of days. But there's ones that are even more extreme. This one right here that was the model that I first showed you, this one actually has upwards to 2 to 4 inches of rain today alone. So look at this. It has 3 to 4 inches of rain by the end of this evening. I'm not saying for sure that's going to happen. However, I do recall the last time that we had a big rain, it was calling for 3.6 inches of rain in Boone. Boone got 3.2. So sometimes it is actually very accurate. I really just like to use this, that it picks up on anomalies and sometimes the worst case scenario. And I think that's the case. So I think the best case scenario is you don't really see too much rain. You see less than a quarter inch, and then you say, what's all the hoopla about? The worst case scenario is that you have a heavy downpour for a couple of hours, and they're getting some of those totals up to about 3 to 4 inches. And oftentimes it takes a stream and a creek and a river to really get the intense flash flooding. We wouldn't be talking about this Texas event and that a devastating event that happened at that campground if it wasn't along a big river. And at the Hidden Night campground, we wouldn't have been talking about that if it wasn't next to a big river. It always takes kind of water to make more water. Everything kind of flows down. Yes, you can oftentimes have a bunch of water like what we happened in North Carolina that you can lead some flash flooding. But I also want to leave one more note with that. 3 of the 4 deaths here in North Carolina from that flooding were people that were trying to drive through floodwaters. So I know it sounds silly and rhymey, turn around, don't drown, but over half of the deaths that happen in flooding, now Texas outside of that statistic, were from people using vehicles trying to challenge the water, or oftentimes driving over bridges where that water is way too high, because many people are swept away with the bridge as the water takes it away. So just more of a somber tone, only because of what's been happening across the country. The fact is, since 4th of July, we've now seen houses floating down rivers, one of the deadliest flooding events you're ever going to hear about, most likely in your lifetime. These type of things happen from tropical systems. For a typical flash flooding event like what we saw here, you do not hear about this that often. And now that we've had our turn here in North Carolina from a tropical depression, that's why we're just taking this seriously, because you do have the event that slow-moving thunderstorms could lead to excessive rain. I'm saying 3 to 4, but truly, if something sits long enough, you're talking about much more than that. So I just want everyone to stay weather alert, especially over the next couple of days. Sure. After that, you're pretty much back to standard issue summertime heat, humidity, and hey, it could storm later on in the day.
All right. Thank you. I mean, and it is, we've had these conditions and these events, you know, New Mexico, Texas, North Carolina now that you've mentioned. And yeah, it is rhymey, but something that at least in the time, you know, turn around, don't drown.
Yeah.
Well, because we always
and we see the road collapsing.
We always, like, I mean, around here, if there's even significant rain, our photog always catches at least one car that's stuck.
Sure enough.
Sure enough.
Yep.
It happens every time.
Because it only takes a foot or an inch to move a vehicle?
No, it's usually an inch of moving water. Technically, it's 3 inches to 6 inches can knock a person down, carry them away. It's usually about a foot to 18 inches that can move a vehicle. Up to 18 to 24 can move a bus. Like you saw how fast some of the water was moving, carrying houses, and cars are just bobbing in the water. It's frightening. If flooding is the most deadly severe weather event you can have. Number one is heat, but I'm talking about for storms, and you saw it. There's nothing you can really say to make the situation better. It's just really crazy, some of the images that you're seeing, it breaks my heart what some of those girls and people went through in Texas.
Absolutely. So we always are constantly thinking about them, and we have Samaritan's Purse out there and Billy Graham Rapid Response out there. So North Carolinians coming through for, people that are across the country pretty much.
And I want to make one more note. That event probably wouldn't have happened if you didn't have kind of the page flipped because of Barry. Now, Tropical Storm Barry was nothing. It made landfall in Mexico, dissipated, and became the remnants. But sometimes what happens is when you have a tropical system move in, it locks in more tropical moisture. And what did we just have here in the Carolinas? You already had flash flooding, deadly flash flooding from Chantal. Chantal was just a basic tropical storm, but you saw the rains that it can produce. We have a lot more moisture. It's been more humid recently, but it sets the tone. It changes the atmosphere. It increases what's called P-watts, which is precipitable water to the atmosphere, and that is pretty much how much rain you get if you completely pretty much wrung the atmosphere out like a sponge. Those are the highest that they've been all year long. Texas had the highest that they've been all year long. So oftentimes it's the indirect impacts of a tropical system that can sometimes lead to the worst case scenario. And again, I don't think we're going to see anything. Texas had much worse scenarios and a lot more rain preceding that. It's just that I think a lot of people seeing this, you have to realize that especially for flash flooding, if you're being warned for it, take it seriously. Don't drive through it. Just be warned. We've seen what the outcomes could be, and I don't want anyone watching WCNC Plus to fall a victim to that.
All right, Chris Mulcahy, water is so powerful.
Yeah, it is.
All right. In the Live Impact studio, thanks for bringing us the latest on your forecast as we are weather alert through at least Thursday. Maybe some light at the end of the week. We'll lift that.
Better by the
I
weekend.
also want to note, too, you mentioned relief efforts for Texas right now.
Yes.
On our website and our mobile app, we have a whole list of ways you can help out, different trusted organizations that you can donate to help relief efforts down there.
Great.
Yes.
WCNC.com.
Yep. Or on our app.
Or on the app.
Wherever you prefer.
Right here,
Yep.
where you have the WCNC Plus app. Okay. All right. And I don't know if this is related to any kind of weather. Duke Energy does not know if it's related to any kind of weather right now, but we are getting word of a power outage in the Matthews, Southeast Charlotte area. According to Duke Energy, reported at 8:41 this morning, so not even an hour ago. About 1,600 customers are without power at this time. They estimate the time of restoration around 11:30, and the cause, again, unknown. What led up to this power outage. So, just want to let you know about that. We will keep tabs on that situation and give you an update as soon as we can. But it looks like at least 11:30 is the ETA of the restoration of power. All right. Tough morning for.
It's hot.
And it's hot.
It's hot.
Yeah, it brings it out, doesn't it?
Right.
It sure does.
Thankfully, it's not like the heat, like the peak of the day, but it's still hot for a power outage to happen.
Yeah.
So.
Oh gosh. Well, check on your neighbors too if you
Yeah.
can, because especially if the elderly and the more vulnerable communities. We've been talking about the latest on the Texas flooding, and it seems that the numbers keep on going up while the surge, although it appears dim on day 5 since the flood hit the Kerrville Hill Country part of Texas. 111 now confirmed dead, over 170 people still unaccounted for it this morning. Jay Gray from NBC News is in Hill Country this morning with the very latest.
As the massive search effort continues, this stunning revelation from Texas Governor Greg Abbott.
Just in the Kerr County area alone, there are 161 people who are known to be missing.
More than 170 unaccounted for across the entire flood zone. This tragedy defined by the staggering numbers, more than 110 dead.
I've lost friends. True friends. And we've lost precious families, precious children. I wish to God there was a way we could have warned them.
There are growing questions, tension, and frustration over whether there was adequate staffing at the National Weather Service and timely warnings before the storm and as the water started to rise. There is no debate about how difficult the cleanup and recovery here will be, or how vital volunteers are as that process begins.
But we had 33 angels show up on Sunday out of nowhere.
Gutting his flood-ravaged home, cutting away soaked sheetrock, clearing out the waterlogged remnants of his life before the storm.
It's just, totally different aspect of volunteering and paying it forward. I don't know where people show up, just wanting to help. That's just amazing.
An effort many consider a responsibility and privilege.
Just to be Texans and just coming together and doing what we need to do.
With this part of Texas battered and hurting. Jay Gray, NBC News, Kerrville.
And again, if you'd like to help the victims and families in Texas, you can go to our website or open up your app on WCNC.com. Right now, Governor Josh Stein is signing 4 bills this morning at the state capitol. He is there making a speech right now. Let's go ahead and listen in here live on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus.
Including in disaster-stricken areas. In both of my Helene budget requests, I requested additional funding for North Carolina Legal Aid and Pisgah Legal Services. Their work has been instrumental in protecting residents from scams that often pop up after storms and to resolving ownership issues necessary to resolve in the long-term recovering process. So I continue to urge the General Assembly to allocate additional funding for these programs on a going forward basis. So while this bill is not perfect, it represents an important step forward in protecting North Carolinians from serious crimes. And I'm grateful to the bill sponsors, Senator Danny Britt, Buck Newton, Warren Daniel, and Representative Carson Smith. I'll now invite forward Elizabeth Watson, Executive Director of the North Carolina Victims Assistance Network, to speak to the bill. Elizabeth?
Good morning. I first want to thank Governor Stein and his team. Morgan, Madison, Bethany. Morgan, what will we do without you today? My name is Elizabeth Watson. I serve as the Executive Director of the North Carolina Victim Assistance Network. And when I say I serve, I mean that I'm honored to serve. We are a North Carolina statewide nonprofit with a mission that provides direct services to loved ones of homicide victims and others harmed by violence, as well as training for allied professionals. Through NCVAN, families across 100 counties of North Carolina can receive grief counseling, weekly support groups, court advocacy and travel assistance when attending homicide trials, information on crime victims' rights, and connection to compensation and other resources. NCVAN was founded in 1986 by loved ones of homicide victims, and our Crime Victims Memorial Garden is just 1 block away on East Lane Street, where a plaque states, "Victims' voices, silence no more." Today, this bill offers support to crime victims in North Carolina, and it is a reminder that they have not been overlooked. A restraining order or a protective order can be crucial for providing victims with physical safety and peace of mind. But for too long, there's been a loophole hindering access to that protection. Senate Bill 429 fixes that problem. Now, if domestic violence happens in North Carolina, the victim can obtain a protective order from our state's court system, whether the victim is a North Carolina resident or not. This bill also makes it easier for victims of crime to receive financial assistance, and I mean all crime victims. Currently, victims only have 72 hours to file a report under the Crime Victims Compensation Act. When a person is a victim of crime, that's not nearly enough time. This bill extends the filing time to 6 months, allowing victims space to begin to process the shock and trauma without a looming deadline. Crime victim compensation is a vital resource for victims as it helps cover the costs of crime scene cleanup, which can be more than $5,000, funerals, which can be $20,000, medical bills, lost wages, and other expenses. This bill will help us support more people as they navigate the criminal legal process. Thank you to the General Assembly for passing this bill and to Governor Stein for signing it into law. And I'll turn it back to Governor Stein for the signing.
Thank you, Sue. Again, I'd like to invite forward the legislators who worked on this bill, and if there are some law enforcement folks who champion this bill, I invite you to join us as well.
Hey there. Good to see you. How you doing? No. Hey, sir, how you doing? Good.
Bill is now law.
Once again, we're going to do our legislators, and then we're going to do advocates.
And right now you are watching live signing from North Carolina Governor Josh Stein, signing 4 bills this morning from Raleigh. One is the SCRIPT Act, the other is the Public Safety Act, another one 311, that's the Law and Order Act, and then the 4th is the Military and Veteran Support Act. So he tends to speak, sign a bill, take photo ops with the advocates and lobbyists for that group, and then he moves on to the next bill. So we are continuing to listen in here live on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus.
quick reset. There's also some seats available if y'all want to sit down.
All right. Next, I will sign Senate Bill 311, the Law and Order Act.
All right, so as he gets ready to speak on the governor speaking on 311, we're going to get back to that. But first, want to talk about this month, July, marking 35 years of the anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, a landmark piece of legislation for civil rights. With significant progress being made, though, over the last 3 decades, there's still a lot of work to be done from advocates. We're joined right now by Carl Blake. He's the Chief Executive Officer of Paralyzed Veterans of America, discussing some of these real-life barriers that millions of people with disabilities still face. Good morning, Carl.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you for joining us here on Live Impact News. From your perspective, has the country lived up to that promise?
Yeah, so PVA has been around for almost 80 years, and accessibility has been a core tenet of our mission since our founding. We were very involved in the passage of the ADA. If you ask one of our members who experienced living in this country with a serious disability prior to the ADA, they would tell you absolutely significant advancements have been made, that this country is a better place. But the bottom line is, no, we have not lived up to that promise because there are still far too many barriers that exist. Our members and frankly, all people with disabilities encounter barriers in their daily life that impact their ability to go about their activities of daily living.
Carl, why don't you give us some examples then of some of these barriers that are still affecting veterans?
Yeah, so some of the barriers are not obvious to the average person, but they're out there everywhere. It's accessible sidewalks, it's accessible crosswalks, it's curb cuts that make those spaces accessible. Many people with disabilities have challenges in accessing restaurants, entertainment venues, hotels, which impacts people's ability to travel. We've even had members who have had challenges in accessing health care, particularly in local and rural community settings, because healthcare facilities may not have the right kind of accessibility needs to meet their needs and to deliver the health care that they need. And so, many of our members have reported these challenges for many years, and they continue to report them even today.
And I see that new data from Paralyzed Veterans of America show 1 out of 3 people with mobility disabilities are reporting that they're missing appointments, something very simple like that because of accessibility barriers. How about the emotional, psychological impact of these challenges?
Yeah, the bottom line is, if you're a person with a disability and you encounter a barrier to your daily life, it's devastating. The average person with a disability spends most of their life just trying to maximize their independence, to live a meaningful, fulfilling life, and be an active and engaged member of society. So if that person experiences a barrier to what they're doing in their daily life, it really is devastating.
Beyond the physical and the mental, I'm seeing challenges to disabled veterans also face in the workplace. How has that improved, or has it not?
I think the area where there's the greatest need for improvement is in enforcement. While the tenets of the law have been implemented in various fashions, where there is a serious lack is the resources and the staffing necessary to ensure that the tenets of the law are enforced. The bottom line is, a law with no real enforcement is no law at all. And so we've put a lot of emphasis on improving that enforcement. If you go to our website, pva.org, you'll find a petition asking for everyone to sign to improve enforcement of the ADA.
Has the digital age, technology helped at all?
Certainly, I think a lot of people with disabilities use advanced technology to improve their lives, but it can be simple things that stand in their way. There are just physical access barriers that exist all around us that are not obvious to people. And for as amazing as digital technology can be, some type of advanced digital technology does not ensure that the curb cut to your local sidewalk is set up in such a fashion that if I'm in a wheelchair, I can actually access the sidewalk.
What would you like to see then in the next 5 years before the 40th anniversary? And what is the call to action from the community?
Well, I think the focus needs to be on public education and getting more people involved in awareness, and then trying to influence further change. There's still more steps that can be done so that these barriers that are out there can be knocked down. What we've asked people to do is go to our website, as I mentioned earlier, pva.org/barriers still exist. You'll see our PSAs that highlight all the various types of barriers that people with disabilities experience. And really what we want is, we just want the general public, we want business owners, we want policymakers to understand they all have a stake in this. That accessibility for people with disabilities is actually accessibility for all. And they have a stake in it, and they can all influence change. And I think over the next 5 years, there's the opportunity to do it. Again, it will require enforcing key tenets of the law that have been that was enacted 35 years ago, but the opportunity is certainly there.
Cara Blake from the Paralyzed Veterans of America, thank you for your time this morning as the Americans with Disabilities Act marks 35 years since being passed here this month. Appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Here in the Live Impact studio, just after 9:30, I'm Jane Monreal. We thank you for joining us here on WCNC Plus. I want to get you right now to Governor Gavin Newsom from California. He is in South Carolina this morning speaking, and the press release says in an effort to connect with rural South Carolina, a red state, as we know, and the governor of California is a Democrat. But he is right now speaking for the Oconee Democratic Party, and connecting with rural South Carolina, those who may be on the fence or leaning a certain way. So let's go ahead and listen in here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus.
What can we do? Well, first of all, I made the point, you guys are doing it by being here today. But the most important thing we can do is de facto end the presidency of Donald Trump by turning out in record numbers next year and taking back the House of Representatives and swearing in the new Speaker of the House. It's de facto ends. And he knows it. He knows it. That's why they're moving so aggressively. But I'll tell you, it is a hell of a thing to watch. To see the Inspector Generals fired, to see all these agencies of oversight, to see the threats of federal judges to be impeached or recalled because they disagree with the President of the United States, to see governors and elected officials be threatened with arrest for just quote unquote, I'll give you Donald's quote, for being elected. Yeah. To be at this moment where we're seeing this war on truth, war on knowledge, where universities like Clemson are considered somehow establishment plots, where we're gutting education, gutting libraries, when we're on a cultural purge, banning books. 4,240 books banned last year. James Baldwin, Alice Walker, I can go down the list, all have certain things in common. This cultural purge that includes going after anything that seems with 3 damn letters. CRT, DEI, ESG, IRS, EPA. You get the drift. Exactly. It's a remarkable moment. And so I hope, with all the shock and awe, because it's all about shock and awe, it's all about flooding the zone, it's all about distraction, it's all about us moving zigzag, responding to this tweet or that tweet or this Truth Social or this assertion or outrageous comment, that we stay focused and we stay on course. And so that's my job, that's our job. That's why in the state of California, on behalf, by the way, of not just the people that I represent, but people all across this country, we've already sued the Trump administration 26 times, and we're barely 6 months into this administration. I say that because I'll remind you, I live in the most un-Trump state in America, and again, that is a deep point of pride. But we're doing it together. 18, 20 other states, and we're winning. We're winning. over and over and over again. Heck, I just sued Fox News for a personal defamation. We're starting to assert ourselves, and that's a big part of this, isn't it? It just is. Fundamentally is. It's the weaponization of grievance, these propaganda networks. It's not about facts, it's about narrative. It's about flooding the zone, and it's not just Fox. It's on Newsmax, it's One American News. It's Sinclair Broadcasting. I'm sorry, if you're a member of Sinclair, there's 185 of those stations, and they literally repeat the same talking points from Central. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. We've got to wake up to that. I know you have woken up to that. That's why you're here. But we've got to push back, and we've got to be more aggressive. We've got to get back on our toes, not our heels. The Democratic Party for too long has been on the receiving end of all these things. Look what Ron DeSantis did just a few years ago. He was quite literally rewriting history, not just censoring historical facts. They had textbooks in the state of Florida, textbooks that were rewritten to remove the race of Rosa Parks because it was too woke to teach history on the basis of someone's race. That happened. By the way, that social studies book was actually drafted by one of the major publishers in this country, and only because people recognized it and pushed back did they stand back. But that's what we're up against. When I say war on knowledge, not just war on, culture, but these guys, look what they're doing in the arts.
Yeah.
Look what they're doing. I mean, science. Back to information and knowledge. It's a war on knowledge. It's a war on truth. The Endowment for Humanities, what they tried to do at the Library of Congress, what he did at the Kennedy Center, what he's doing at the Smithsonian, across the board. And we can get to the CDC, we can talk about the NIH. I mean, why is this country, we had a formula for success. Why are we the dominant economy in the world? We had a formula for success. It's not by happenstance that the United States of America has been so extraordinary. It was about pushing out the boundaries of discovery and science. It was about research and development.
People.
It was about the opportunity to invest in people, conveyor belt for talent, public education, institutions of higher learning. It was about the ability to get first round, forgive the vernacular, but first round draft choices from around the rest of the world. The best and the brightest would come to America, immigrants.
Yes.
That would come to America, the lifeblood of new Americans. I mean, you remember, Donald Trump has a painting of Ronald Reagan. My office, actually, Ronald Reagan's old office, former governor. Sort of interesting. I told the president when I was in the Oval Office, and I was there, I said, he is definitely looking down at you, Mr. President. I swear to God I said that. I swear to God I said that. And I reminded him of his last speech, Ronald Reagan's last speech as President of the United States, where he talked about the torch of Lady Liberty. It's a beautiful speech. And he talked about that life force of new Americans. He made the best case for diversity, the best case for what it means to be an American, for our greatness, what separates us from all other nations. How far we have fallen from that. A formula for success that is being vandalized every single day. And so you stand between that and the rule not of law, but the rule of Don. Because that, at the end of the day, is what it's all about. And so it is powerful and important that you're here. It's powerful and important that you support your local party. I'm proud to be here in a county that probably doesn't overwhelmingly support some guy from California. Is that about right? I don't know. That's what I'm being told. I mean, I can test the theory by walking the streets with you, but I don't know if you have got enough security for that. But I'm happy to be here, and this is the last point, because we need to show up. We need to be in communities like this. The Democratic Party's taken you for granted. We don't show up. Stopped showing up decades ago. You travel the South, the Democratic Party, was in the majority for years and years and years and years. We were in assemblies and state senates, and we had the legislative branch, and so many up until 2010, it all seemed to change. And then we changed. We decided, well, good riddance. good luck. And so I'm here because I want you to know you matter, and our Democratic Party needs to care more. And we need to keep coming back, and we need to continue to listen. So just, forgive the long-windedness, but I'm just so grateful that all of you came out here today. I'll spare you my personal comments about Lindsey Graham. I just had to go. I just wanted to check on my audience. I just want to see. My gosh. I don't know where Lindsey is, but I don't know where Lindsey is on anything. Any day. Okay? Yeah. Though I did just have an image of, in relation to where he is, but that's a whole other conversation. So I know that's tough, and I want to just end on this because it's serious, because what Lindsey did to you is pretty extraordinary. What he did to this community is pretty extraordinary. What he did to this country is just outrageous. And I'd be remiss if I didn't highlight this. That bill they just signed, that consigns the greatest transfer of wealth in U.S. history, from one generation to the next. Completely saddling our kids and grandkids. Trillions and trillions of dollars in debt. In order to finance the debt, to provide tax cuts for billionaires and corporations that didn't even ask for them in many cases. Certainly don't need them. Never done better. Never done better. In order to claim they're paying for it, what did they do to you?
Medicaid.
Well, they're about to shut down your Memorial Hospital in the county. It's one of the 5. There's 15 rural hospitals in your state. 5 that are immediate risk of closing.
Wow.
Yours is one of them. I was in Mullins yesterday. There was another hospital there. In Chester, another hospital in Chester where we were yesterday as well. That literally are on the list. By gutting Medicaid, you are putting at risk these rural hospitals, access to basic care, emergency care, maternal care. These and jobs in these communities, how critical they are. The food stamp cut, the impacts to SNAP, the impacts to small farmers. We're all over. We met a bunch of farmers yesterday and how their programs were snatched out from under them. All to pay for tax cuts for billionaires and millionaires that, again, don't need them, in many cases weren't even asking for them. Lindsey Graham did that. He could have individually stopped that. He betrayed the very communities he claims to represent. One of the most impacted communities by all these cuts, rural parts of the state, rural parts of our country, turned their back on you. It's one big betrayal, not just one big ugly bill. Betrayal is the word. And so I want you to know, if Democrats, I just think as Democrats, if we care about the values we preach, then we have to practice it by having the back of rural communities. Because everything we claim to care about is disproportionately represented in rural South Carolina and rural parts of the United States of America. So that's why I'm here, and that's why I'm grateful you're here. Keep it up. This is extraordinary. You all took the time to come out here, and if any of you do want to walk the streets with me, I'm happy to walk and knock on some doors. But I just want to thank you all very, very much for coming out today. Thank you for our State Democratic Party.
We're going to do what we did in Kershaw last night. Is that okay?
I'm good, yeah.
Okay.
Hello anyway.
He's going to say hi to everybody. We're going to move everybody through, but we need to do this quickly and orderly. Please don't tell him your life story as much as you want to. He may care, but not right now. So he's going to stand here. We're going to get everybody through, and we'll hand us your phones. We'll take your pictures. I promise you. Okay? So we're going to line this way.
Well, it looks like it's photo op time there in South Carolina. Again, California Governor Gavin Newsom here in South Carolina launching a 2-day tour of the state, calling on voters across rural areas, some in GOP strongholds, and trying to exercise their moral authority as it is in a red state, and asking them to stand up to the president in next year's midterm elections. Governor of California in South Carolina, it seems a little off-brand.
We looked at it, we said, huh.
Why is he here?
Why is he here? Why is he in upstate South Carolina?
I don't know. But he is, and so
He is.
we brought that to you. And also...
We'll see where he goes next.
Yeah.
He went just for, if people don't know, Seneca's like out past Greenville, past Clemson, kind of close to the Georgia state line.
Right.
So if he's on a tour, as the prompt says,
Yeah.
he's going to be hitting other spots.
Exactly.
So we'll see if he comes anywhere near here.
If he comes to North Carolina, we have our own cruise. So that was our affiliate there out of Greenville.
Yes.
That is so close to Seneca. Right, Carlene?
Correct.
For South Carolina girl. She's our resident South Carolina expert.
I do what I can.
And then it seems like Governor Josh Stein also finished wrapping up signing 4 bills this morning. So a quick morning there out of North Carolina State Capitol in Raleigh. Want to go to our nation's capital right now because we have a committee meeting here. This is the Director of Senate Committee vote for the CDC, and they're going to vote here on the nomination of Susan Monterez to be the Director of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Let's go ahead and listen in here live on Impact News on WCNC Plus.
So heard.
Thank you.
Adjourned.
Well, that was short-lived.
Well, there you go.
Okay, so now you know. We will get back to it if we do see the picture come back up here into the WCNC Charlotte newsroom. Gotta love live TV. Let's see. We are going to go now to what else is happening around the nation's capital and President Trump's, addressing the flooding in Texas, as well as the latest talks now on the tariffs. Alice Barr in Washington.
A friend of mine is very successful.
President Trump with his cabinet at his side, focusing on foreign wars and trade negotiations.
I just want you to know, a letter means a deal.
Saying overnight new trade announcements are coming this morning for 7 countries after sending letters to 14 global trading partners on Monday, establishing higher tariff rates if they don't negotiate new deals before August 1st.
It's a better way. It's a more powerful way.
The president also announcing a new 50% tariff on copper imports without setting a date, and saying new pharmaceutical levies of up to 200% are coming. As countries scramble to respond, Chinese officials warning the U.S. against reigniting trade tensions, promising retaliation if any deals hurt their economy. Turning to Ukraine, where Russian attacks are ramping up, President Trump confirming he approved sending more defensive weapons to Ukraine after the Pentagon paused shipments, citing concerns about low stockpiles.
Putin is not treating human beings right. He's killing too many people.
In a shift in tone, the president voicing increasing frustration with Russian President Vladimir Putin.
We get a lot of bull thrown at us by Putin, for you want to know the truth.
Now reviewing a bipartisan sanctions package against Russia, as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu meets today with Republican lawmakers and top defense officials amid a renewed push for a ceasefire with Hamas to end the devastating fighting in Gaza and bring hostages home. In Washington, Alice Barr, NBC News.
Here's some breaking news right now. Power restored much earlier than expected in southeast Charlotte. The Matthews area had about 1,600 customers from Duke Energy reporting they were out power around 8:40 this morning. Again, the word just coming in here to the WCNC newsroom and Live Impact News, an update that power has been restored. So good news there, as it is a very hot day continuing, and that's why we are weather alert. An update now on the Texas flooding. NBC News reporting that 111 people confirmed dead over 170 people still missing. And as I said earlier at the top of our 9 o'clock stream here on WCNC Plus, North Carolinians coming together and supporting those in need, whether it is from covering your basics like Red Cross, to helping do the search and rescue, to being a source of comfort. And the Billy Graham Rapid Response Team was there yesterday. They took a little bit of time out of their mission there in the Hill Country part of Texas to speak to our Vanessa Rufus. Oh, our Nick Sturdivant. That's right. Nick Sturdivant yesterday afternoon. There's a previously recorded interview of what they're doing there in Hill Country on WCNC Plus.
It ties in. We have organizations and folks deploying there in Texas to help those folks that are in great need right now. One of those organizations, Billy Graham Rapid Response Team. Right now we have Josh Holland, the International Director of the Billy Graham Rapid Response Team. Josh, thank you for your time.
Yeah, Nick, hey, thank you for having us on.
Can you walk us through, when did you guys get there, and talk about the work you've been doing since you got there?
So we actually had crisis-trained chaplains on the ground within several hours of the flooding on the 4th of July. These chaplains who live in the San Antonio area, about an hour and a half or so away from where I'm at here in Kerrville, Texas, were welcomed in a reunification center where parents were waiting actually at the time to be alerted as to the status of their children who were at the Camp Mystic specifically. So our chaplains have had ministry really here since just several hours after the storm. We have a team of about 10 crisis-trained chaplains who are trained in clinically and understanding grief and trauma. And we know there's no words to say at all that would make anything better for families that are living through their worst nightmare right now. But we have people here that feel called just to be a listening ear, a shoulder to cry on, and to offer spiritual and emotional care during a devastating time like this.
Josh, for those who are not familiar with what you guys do, can you sort of talk to us about what Billy Graham Rapid Response Team, the job that you guys do?
Yeah, thanks, Nick. So the Billy Graham Rapid Response Team started after September 11th, 2001. Franklin Graham, the president of our organization and ministry, was at ground zero just a few days after the terrorist attack in our country, and felt like God would call us as a ministry to be able to raise up an army of chaplains, crisis-trained chaplains that could respond all over the world in a moment's notice to natural disasters, man-made disasters. And so we have now around the world around 2,000 volunteer chaplains that go and deploy, respond to a natural disaster, whether it's a hurricane or a flood, fire, earthquake, tornado, man-made disasters like terrorist incidents, wars, mass shootings. And so, again, as I mentioned, during tragedy and during crisis, there's no magic words. There's nothing to say in a situation like this here in Texas that'll make anything better. But we as a Christian ministry feel like God has called us, like the Bible says, to mourn with those who mourn, to listen. Sometimes people need to process and verbalize what they're going through. We train our chaplains just to be there and to listen, and to share that in the midst of the deepest, darkest valleys in life, that we as Christians believe there's a God in heaven that loves us so much that he sent his son, Jesus Christ, to take our sin so we can be with him in heaven. So that's our ministry, is just to be here without the answers, but to just let people know we love you and God loves you.
Josh, you guys are on the front line of, as you mentioned, tragedy. It's some of the worst moments, days of folks' lives. How do you guys process that? How do you work through that? Because I know that, in a way, it takes a toll on you guys. I know you're there to help, but how do you process all of that?
Yeah, thank you, Nick. That's a great question. There's a clinical term called secondhand trauma or secondhand grief, where you might not have experienced the situation yourself or the circumstance yourself, but for days, sometimes our chaplains are here up to a week at a time, 12-hour days of listening to stories of heartache that just rip your heart out, loss, trauma, death, destruction of homes, property. And so it does take a toll on the caregivers, on the chaplains. We're very intentional about offering support for our chaplains, debriefing, this kind of thing upon their return home. We have a specialized team that helps with that. But yeah, it's something that not just our ministry, but everybody here, there's so many great organizations and ministries here in Texas wanting to help right now. And it's a lot of pain. It's really unspeakable pain. And so it's important for those that are trying to help to make sure they take time to decompress themselves.
And that was our Nick Sturtevant talking to the team there for Billy Graham Rapid Response Team in the Texas Hill Country. We are hearing a lot of flooding issues, of course, in Texas. But if you haven't heard, there's also severe flooding in parts of New Mexico as well as Chicago. This is video now from Monday. Someone at a home shooting this video on their phone, and look at this house. This is down the Rio Ruidoso River at Hollywood, which crested at about 20 feet. According to NBC, 7 inches of rain fell in about an hour, 8 inches in 80 minutes. So severe flooding there. There are a few deaths reported as well due to that. And then flooding reported in the Chicago metro area yesterday afternoon and evening. Well, as we move from weather now to back to some of the news making, some of the stories that are making the news here in the Charlotte area, there is a new workforce development program. And earlier this morning, our Ben Thompson and Kaylin Hagwood talked to organizers there trying to get some graduates to jobs right away, making Charlotte the place to be and not having to move. So let's listen in on this program if you missed it earlier on WCNC Plus.
Sherry, thanks for taking time. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
We know you have a graduation tonight. Exciting time. What kinds of jobs are these grads going to be filling?
Wow, they're going to fill some amazing jobs here with the city of Charlotte. We have 10 different types of occupations. We have terminal operations, lost and found, and aviation, office assistant with CATS, which is the Charlotte Transit System, Area Transit System, STS reservationist with CATS. We have street crew member with CDOT, tree trimmer with general services, just a variety of great opportunities.
How did the Education to Employment program get started?
Yeah, so this is our second cohort. We did have a cohort with the class of 2024 from CMS, and this is a response to ongoing challenges faced by recent graduates who are not enrolling in college, maybe not enlisting in the military, and who are just on the employment track after graduating high school. And this opportunity, it really provides them with a more intentional and structured pathway to a meaningful employment with public service, within public service.
Taking a wider view of this issue, Sherry, as you likely know, Charlotte ranked at the bottom of the list about 10 years ago in the Chetty study for economic mobility. Basically, folks who were born into poverty struggled more here than any other city to get out of poverty. When it comes to economic mobility, what do these jobs mean for the city and for these students?
Yes, it means so much. You know, it's getting them gainfully employed. It's helping with talent retention. It's keeping them in the city, but they are positive contributors to the community because of this employment. They are, going to ensure the pipeline of skilled workers. They're being upskilled and reskilled in not just jobs, but in careers that are sustainable for them to live, thrive, and really be productive within the city.
Well, you talked about this being the program's second year. Do you have any success stories from the first year?
Yes, absolutely. You know, we have a 76 retention rate from the students that we hired last year, which is great. They have found so much value in the work that they do. We have many that are looking at this as a future career, something that they're going to be in for the long haul. We've had one to say he's going to be with the city of Charlotte for 30 years. They are already taking advantage of the other great benefits that the city of Charlotte has for its employees, such as career coaching and taking advantage of our tuition prepayment program that's aligned with and in partnership with Central Piedmont Community College. So they are really happy to know that there's room to grow. We have internal mobility, so they don't always have to pivot outside. They can stay within.
And we mentioned tonight's a graduation, a big night for some of these students and job candidates. What brings you the most excitement about a night like this?
What brings me the most excitement is that we have expanded the opportunities for the students from last year to this year. And, you know, it has grown, offering more job placements, stronger partnerships. You know, we're going to have a great 2-week workplace readiness training for them when they first start. So we've collaborated with all different employees within the city, as well as external partners, and also the community impact. This graduation celebrates not just their own achievements, but also the impact that it's going to have on their families, the neighborhoods, and our communities, and just the career paths that they're all going to take their first step in starting tonight.
I tell you what, it makes so much sense when you think about you have students graduating and you have a city that's growing and needs these jobs filled within a city government. So it makes you wonder what took so long to do it. But we're glad it's here, and congrats to all those folks graduating tonight. Sherry Jones, we're with Workforce Development. Sherry, thanks for taking time. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Sherry.
Thank you.
A program that sounds like it has some promise here for young workers getting into the workforce. All right, want to switch things now at 10:02 on Wednesday morning. You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Jane Monreal. We appreciate you joining us here this morning. Got you caught up with some local news. One being that program to help grads out enter the workforce. The other, and we've talked about this here on WCNC Charlotte, the Monroe City Council voting now yesterday, that is, on the mayor trying there have been some controversies surrounding the mayor there of Monroe. They did deliver a 5-2 vote of no confidence against Mayor Robert Burns on yesterday. And so what does that mean? Our Miles Harris talked to our Vanessa Rufus last night on what this means to the city of Monroe.
In meetings, to a meeting that happened today in Monroe. If you're watching here on WCNC Plus for our evening news, we had an update out of Monroe city politics, if you will. We've got Miles joining us now. Miles, you were on that story. Miles Harris, you got this breaking update for us at 5 and 6 about this no confidence vote for the mayor. So tell us about that, and also all the other things that happened in this meeting.
Yeah. I want to go ahead and set like the vibe of this room when we got in there. It was a full house inside this city council meeting, a lot. And some were in favor and supporting Mayor Burns, some obviously opposed on the other end. But obviously there was a lot of concerns and questions really in regards to the mayor and some of these, let's be honest here, controversies of recent months. Some of the things that they had mentioned in the meeting, one citing the comments that he made in regards to the Supreme Court's decision of Roe v. Wade. Where he was actually censored for that, and some of the and there's a reason why we mentioned that as well. And there was a lot of other things as well that were mentioned also in regards to somehow how at the last minute Monroe was added to House Bill 3 in that last minute provision, which again has people that are voters in that area. They have to pick a party on who they are before they can vote or cast their ballot. So there's a handful of things mentioned in this decision as far as going for the no confidence vote. We heard from both sides. We also heard from the mayor pro tem, which was also an interesting point with this one as well, because they actually voted to remove him from his position as well. So there's a lot of layers with this meeting, a lot of controversy, and again, like I said, a lot of questions. Overall, though, it sounded like some of the city council members, they just didn't really feel that the mayor was doing his duties in the utmost way, or the way that they wanted to be represented when it comes to their city as a whole. They felt like some of the things that he was doing on a social media account, for example, and the ways that he had posted, even though he had cited that those were his own opinions and views, they felt like with his position and his chair, it didn't speak for the people of Monroe, and it wasn't in the best interest for the city of Monroe. So they just wanted to kind of hold this vote to kind of help hold accountability with their city leaders, but also just building transparency with the city members as well.
And I mean, I'm curious, what would feasibly come next here, because I mean, Mayor Burns will remain in office.
Yeah.
It's a no confidence vote. It's not like
and that's the thing that the city attorney did make clear as well, that this vote doesn't mean that he can be removed from his seat or his position. It's really just a symbolic move at this point. And so they really wanted to make sure that they emphasize this. Like I said, he's already been censored actually when it came to his comments made in the Roe v. Wade and a couple other of the social media posts. He again also had mentioned to the city attorney to chime him in mentioning that he's not breaking any rules, which by their standards, he's not breaking any rules by doing that. But that doesn't mean that city council members can't have their opinions or reactions to what he's posting on his platform, which they think is properly benefiting him, his viewers, his supporters, things of that nature. So again, a lot of controversy that's been centered around this mayor, which is why city council members are speaking up about this and why this had taken place.
Now I'm curious, I mean, was the mayor himself present? Did he make remarks? If so, and what did he say?
Yeah, actually a good question there, Vanessa. So he was there. He actually defended a lot of his positions. The thing that he did when it came to the questions surrounding his social media was he felt, and he made a stressful point in saying that he is using his First Amendment. He's using his freedom of speech right to be able to voice his own opinions or thoughts regardless of his title or position. That's where he felt, and again, he felt like he's already been censored for those comments and issues and things of that nature, which is why he didn't feel like those things could go into factor when it comes to this vote or decision of no confidence. So that was one of the first things he also said. One, he did mention that he does feel like he is speaking for the best interest of his community, but overall he felt like he was doing everything with his job and his position within power within the right way. The other point we mentioned though as well was the decision that was made with the mayor pro tem, David Dotson. They voted to remove him from his position. Now I will say that the only two people that voted against the no confidence were the mayor and the mayor pro tem. Everybody else on the board that were in this meeting, city council members in particular, voted for the no confidence. Who they did not was him and Mayor Burns.
That's an interesting dynamic, and I'm wondering, based on the dialogue and who spoke and who said what, did it feel like that was like an allyship there between the two, and so maybe there's like factions within leadership there in Monroe?
Yeah, I mean, I think so as well. I mean, overall, it seemed like, based on some of the city council members that we had spoken to, whether it was for this story or other stories, they do have a wide range of community members, but overall, it sounded like on either side that they just wanted their board, their members to best represent this city and this community. And so one of the things that they really had an issue was with the lack of transparency for city council members, so they say, when it came to the communication with this House Bill 3. They feel as though like the mayor may have known about this beforehand or before they found out. And so what they had told us, some of the city council members had told us, is that they did not know about that until they had got a call, the city got a call asking for a check for the changes with that implement for Monroe when it came to House Bill 3. So that's kind of where there's also, I feel like, sparked this vote of no confidence. Just this and a lot of the controversy that I had already mentioned, but this is city council members kind of speaking out and trying to voice their opinions or reaction, I guess, to some of the latest actions done by the mayor.
Yeah, and we'll remind folks too, because we've done a lot of reporting as well, including you yourself, Miles, have done reporting on House Bill 3, the fact that it's going to change up the municipal elections, so now those will be held on a different year, so I think it moves from odd to even years.
He gets an extra year now, or they get an extra year in that area, yes.
Yeah, and then as you alluded to, the fact that, some of these municipal offices, they'll have to pick a party, and if they want to run unaffiliated, they have to get a certain percentage of the voters to kind of sign off.
It's a big change, but it really is. And I think the thing about it though too is, overall, when I talk to some community members, they're like, this forces now the hand and the benefit side of like, you have to educate voters before you vote now. You have to, in a degree, understand what you're voting for, which can work out, but at the same time, if I don't feel as though I have to make this decision or make this change before I go vote, it feels like this is also a change that hasn't been made in like over 60 years.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting change. It does have a lot of layers with it, but that's just one of the things that a lot of city council members are speaking out against today.
Yeah. Anything else on this topic? Because I do want to transition, because we had the Gastonia Cooling Centers update, and I know you were on that story, but anything else about Monroe, like what comes next, anything you're looking at?
Council member Anthony will apparently take the role, or was been mentioned as being the role seeker or the person that will take the role for the mayor pro tem position. So we'll see what that transition looks like and what kind of changes in that regard. But I think the biggest thing here is they just wanted accountability, and they just wanted to be full transparency moving forward, which I think we'll have to kind of see now based on this vote what that will look like in Monroe.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for keeping us posted. I know it was kind of a quick turnaround between the vote and you hopping in front of the camera for our news at 5 and then again at 6. So we appreciate that. And
right now, time is 10:11 here in the Live Impact studio. You're watching WCNC Plus. Happening right now, some members of Congress are meeting virtually, and they are holding a bit of a press conference for us here on the virtual side regarding cuts to NOAA. It is the federal agency dealing with weather, and our Brad Panovich has talked how this might affect things with meteorologists telling us the weather, and of course the Carolinas affected by any severe storms, as we have seen from Chantal. We know that Representative from South Carolina, James Clyburn, is on this call, and so this looks like it's being headed up by U.S. Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz. And again, you can see Representative James Clyburn there. He is speaking right now. Let's go ahead and listen in here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus.
I'm joining you and others all across the country and around the world, wishing God's good graces upon those who are suffering this unimaginable flood result there in Texas. And it is a reminder to all of us of that old adage that most of us grew up with, if not all. It is better to have and not need than to need and not have. And that is so fundamental to what is taking place in Texas today. Now, I have the great honor, and I might add the responsibility, of representing the entire peninsula of Charleston, South Carolina. That city originated as a peninsula, and though they have expanded the city limits into other places, the fact of the matter, that place is really a peninsula. And so we are subjected to all kinds of storms. Some we expect and get prepared for. But there are other parts of my congressional district that will not spend a lot of time preparing for hurricanes, because that's not a part of their everyday goings and comings. So it was when Helene visited us several years ago. Now, when Hugo came back in 1989, we expected it, we were prepared for it, but we had no idea that the damage would be what it was. But when you have the hurricanes coming into areas like Aiken, South Carolina, that have never experienced anything like that before, and right across the Savannah River in Augusta, Georgia, I visited both those places after that hurricane. Nobody had ever seen anything like it, and nobody expected to ever see anything like it in those two communities, one in South Carolina, the other across the line in Georgia. But that is what we're faced with today. We may argue all we want about what may or may not be the cause. Those who consider climate change as a hoax, let me remind you, study the science, and you'll know that climate change is not a hoax. It is a reality, and it's a reality that we are living with, and it's a reality that we must be prepared to confront. And for us to see budget considerations leaving out the response that we need from FEMA and from the forecasters is just beyond comprehension. And I just believe that those of us who live with these eventualities, those of us who have the responsibility of representing the people who are going to be subjected to these eventualities, we have the responsibility to do what is necessary to not just give the warnings, but also be prepared to respond to their needs when they are presented. And so thank you so much, Debbie, for continuing your good work in this area. I'm very pleased to be a part of helping you. And I also know that there is another one with us today who is not just experiencing these matters, but also very sensitive to them and who has lived through them. And I'm speaking of Lois Frankel. Thank you, Lois, for being with us. I look forward to seeing the two of you next week when we get back to Washington. Hopefully, we'll get a little more sanity next week than we got last week and can respond to this in a way that will make our constituents happy. With that, Lois, unmute yourself.
Yes, there we go. Thank you, Jim. And thank you for your very articulate, forceful words, and good to be with you, Debbie and Sheila, and all these weather experts. Like you, Debbie, my heart goes out to all those who impacted by the horrendous tragedy of the flooding in Texas, and then again last night in New Mexico. As a former mayor of West Palm Beach, I know what it's like to face weather disaster. I led my city through 4 hurricanes and saw firsthand the power of nature and the life-saving importance of early warning systems. We had roofs blown off, power out for weeks, roads blocked, and even one hurricane, we completely lost our water system, our 911 system. But thankfully, no lives were lost, and that's because we had 2 or 3 days notice, advance warning from NOAA, the backbone of our nation's weather system. And NOAA can do, and they did what our local and state governments simply cannot do. They use satellites, radar, aircraft, they track storms, and they issue watches and warnings coordinating with FEMA and our local officials. And because of the NOAA warnings, we were able to evacuate people early from high-risk areas. Families put up their storm shutters. They stocked up on food and water. Dangerous debris was removed from streets. Flashlights and batteries and backup supplies were ready. Emergency contractors were put on standby to remove fallen trees. Without those alerts, the destruction, the desperation, the injuries, and yes, deaths would have occurred. Without NOAA, we would have been flying blind. Last year, hurricanes again the hurricanes came into Florida. We had Hilton and Milton right here, deadly tornadoes and in Palm Beach County. And NOAA is warning us that yes, this is going to could be a bad hurricane season. And that's why Trump's proposed cuts are not just reckless, they are dangerous. The slashing of over $1 billion, almost $2 billion from NOAA's budget, the firing of people, something like 2,000 NOAA employees have been fired or forced out, including 600 from the National Weather Service. And let me be clear, these cuts threaten the safety, family, and businesses across Florida and our nation. And even though the Commerce Department actually just exempted the National Weather Service from the hiring freeze, and yet The jobs still haven't been posted for 126 positions, which is not going to quite make up for what's been lost. Every year, South Florida braces for hurricane season. We depend on accurate forecasts, timely alerts, and science-based guidance to keep our families safe. And thank you so much to the weather experts here. And the deadly floods in Florida, where over 100 people have died, including children, hundreds still missing, is a tragic reminder of what's at stake. We should be strengthening NOAA, not gutting it. We must stop these dangerous cuts before the hurricane hits us. This is an alert. And with that, again, I thank, great to be with my colleagues, and I'm going to turn this over to Sheila Sheffilis McCormick, my great neighbor here in Palm Beach County. And I thank you all. See you next week.
Thank you so much, Lois. Thank you so much, Debbie, for having us today. Thank you so much, Leader Claiborne, for joining us also. And thank you for our expert. I'm Congresswoman Sheila Sheffilis McCormick, and my heart is breaking for all the families who lost their children, lost lives. We're looking at the devastation. We're looking at the climate change, the rising heat, the rising melting glades. And it just really, really hurts my heart, but also makes it even more imperative that we really start pushing back on these cuts that we're seeing to NOAA. As of right now, we know that 10% of their staff has been cut. They're proposing to cut another 17%. When we compound that, that's 27% of the staff that would be cut. That would help us actually find out more information about these storms, these hurricanes, these floods that can protect and save several lives. But we're also looking at cuts of $1.8 billion to that budget. Where would we be if we go through with all these cuts? I'm afraid with this climate, the rising floods that we've seen, that it would devastate not just one area, but most of our country. In Fort Lauderdale, we've seen back-to-back floods that have devastated homes and people, taken lives, but also has hurt many small businesses that took them months and months to recover, including the airport. And now, as we're looking at this rising climate change and the rising sea levels, how can we actually say this is the moment to cut? If we do go forward with these cuts, we would be playing Russian roulette with American lives. And that is not what the American people have hired us to do. They have hired us, they voted for this administration to move forward so we can protect their lives and actually have innovation when it comes to protecting them, when it comes to flood warnings, when it comes to actually being able to track storms and weather patterns. And that's what we need to be doing. We really need to be funding NOAA to its full amount. We saw funding before at $6.6 billion. We need to be on an upward trajectory to make sure that we're protecting the American people. Ignoring climate change, ignoring these rising sea levels, ignoring the floods that have been devastating Americans time and time again, year after year after year, we're seeing more rains that are record-breaking. At this point, it is no longer record-breaking. This is our new normal, and we must fund to the level that would allow us to protect the American people at this new level. And that's why it's so important that we're actually pushing this issue right now, that everyone's being made aware, and that this administration would change course and start funding NOAA to its accurate levels that are necessary to protect us. So I thank the experts for being here and shedding light on what's actually going on. And I also thank everyone who's paying attention to this issue. And as we move forward, we need to move forward bipartisanly. We need the administration, we need everybody to come on the same page and realize that our job to the American people is to protect them first. And once they are protected, then we could look at what other places we can do cuts. But to go forward in this climate, in this situation, in this manner, is nothing less than reckless and unconscionable. Thank you so much for having me today, Debbie, and thank you so much for everyone who's here today. And I'd like to pass it back to Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sheila and Lois and Whip Clyburn. It is really helpful and important to have your thoughtful perspectives. Most importantly here, we have the world-renowned experts in weather prediction, in weather expertise. And I want to first kick off by giving us an opportunity to hear from one of the most respected voices in this field, a scientist whose work improved the accuracy of forecasts and saved countless lives. Dr. Robert Atlas, the former longtime director of NOAA's Oceanographic and Meteorological Laboratory. Say that 3 times fast. Dr. Atlas.
Thank you for inviting me to participate in this briefing. After serving as an operational forecaster in the U.S. Air Force, and then as a research scientist for NASA for 32 years, I became the director of NOAA's Atlantic Oceanographic and Meteorological Laboratory located in South Florida. AOML is one of NOAA's major research laboratories, and like several other labs in OAR, it has as one of its main goals the improvement of weather forecasting. AOML, in conjunction with its partners, performs a wide range of activities that have contributed to very significant improvements in hurricane forecasting. These include the development of new observing systems and advanced hurricane forecast models, improving how observations are assimilated into the models, flying into hurricanes and deploying airborne drones and ocean gliders to provide critical measurements for improving both the model predictions and our understanding of key hurricane processes that also improves the models. I'd like to show a figure of the improvements that have been made. I know this isn't too clear being held up like this, but there have been constant improvements over the years since we started a hurricane forecast improvement project in NOAA. And every year, the errors in our track and our intensity forecasts have been reduced. And this is particularly important because previously there had been no improvement in hurricane intensity forecasting. In forecasting the intensity of hurricanes, where they will make landfall, and being able to extend the forecast lead time on those is extraordinarily important. The elimination of AOML and its cooperative institute at the University of Miami can have a very detrimental effect on hurricane forecasts for our nation. There would be no more scientific support for NOAA's Hurricane Hunter missions, as well as for airborne drones and ocean gliders. All of this expertise exists in the Hurricane Research Division and the Physical Oceanography divisions of AOML. As a result, vital data would no longer be assimilated into hurricane models or be available to forecasters and researchers. In addition, there would be a halt in the development and improvement of models like NOAA's state-of-the-art hurricane analysis and forecast system, which produces the most accurate intensity forecasts of any model in the world. It is estimated that this loss, the loss of AOML and its cooperative institute, would result in a 20 to 40% decrease in hurricane forecast accuracy, which would cost the economy more than $10 billion for a single hurricane season if only 2 major hurricanes were to hit the United States. This cost to the economy is 20 times larger than all of the budget cuts to OAR that are proposed. But even more disturbing would be the probability of increased loss of life if hurricane forecast accuracy decreases. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You are watching live right now a virtual press conference, which we are continuing to carry on our secondary channel on WCNC Plus. If you want to listen in at any point regarding the cuts being made to NOAA for fiscal year 2026. All right, here at just about 10:30 right now, Wednesday morning, I'm Jane Monreal. You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. The Transportation Security Administration rolling out some changes. We heard yesterday on WCNC Charlotte that the possibility of not having to take off your shoes going through the security check line might be a foreseeable benefit coming up soon, including Charlotte Douglas Airport. Another benefit will center around military families as part of their Serve with Honor, Travel with Ease campaign. So joining us right now to discuss these important updates is Acting Deputy Director from TSA, Adam Stahl. Thank you, Mr. Stahl, for joining us this morning.
Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
So what prompted TSA to expand these benefits for military specifically?
Yeah, I think so. This administration, the Secretary is really committed to really streamlining, modernizing aviation security, aviation screening across the board. And again, we really strongly believe, she believes, that the military community, of course, men and women across the nation work hard, tirelessly to protect and preserve our freedoms. We thought it was the right thing to do, candidly, and a small but really important step to salute them, but also ease the burden of travel for those members in the military and their families.
So walk us through some of these changes that are being offered.
Sure. So three primary benefits. The first, of course, is going to be dedicated fast-track front-of-the-line access at checkpoints at select kind of densely populated, highly trafficked military communities, military airports across the United States, including Charlotte Douglas International Airport. Secondly, a $25 discount for military spouses, first of its kind. And then lastly, something we're particularly proud of and working in close conjunction with our sponsors and enrollment providers as well, free pre-check for Gold Star family members, members that, of course, unfortunately have lost their life in the line of duty, their spouses and their children. If folks have additional questions or concerns or want to know how to enroll or where, I encourage them to go to tsa.gov for more information.
Okay, so that's a good resource to get there. And then military spouses, you mentioned the $25 discount. So what will they actually pay for after getting the discount?
So they will be getting a pre-check, pre-check benefits, which is for viewers that aren't familiar with pre-check. It's a trusted traveler kind of pre-enrolled process for highly frequented travelers. And this is really to optimize the seamlessness, improve the seamlessness of travel. Ton of benefits, primarily reduction in wait times at checkpoints, approximately half a percent, a 50% reduced wait time as opposed to standard, less invasive or intrusive inspections, a screening, including belts and jackets as well. Of course, you alluded to the significant announcement as well, shoes off, ending of a shoes off policy by the Secretary yesterday, of course, which is a significant announcement as well. So a variety of benefits for pre-check enrollees.
All right, and do service members need to wear uniform in order to access some of these dedicated lanes or benefits?
No, they don't. As long as they provide, the military ID, and we also recognize that a lot of military armed service members aren't wearing, their uniforms and whatnot. So if they just provide their military IDs at the front of the checkpoint at participating airports, them and their co-travelers will be able to get front of the line expedited access at these select airports across the country.
What about restrictions? Anything that military families need to keep in mind with these benefits?
Now, I think so. This is just, I've been saying this to others. This is the beginning, not the end of this initiative, and so we're closely kind of watching to see, demand, interest. We're definitely considering possibly expanding benefits or this out to other additional airports as well. So, if folks have any additional questions or areas of clarification, we just ask them to go to tsa.gov for more information or ask TSA on socials.
And for those of us those of our viewers who weren't aware about the potential for not having to take off the shoes, where is that from?
Yeah, so this was announced yesterday by Secretary Noem, and this is really all about modernizing, the aviation screening process. This is nationwide, taking effect immediately. And this is, again, a focus on modernizing aviation security while also not compromising security at all. I really want to underscore that. The investments over the past 20 years, our multi-layered security approach and our evolution in our security posture, improvements in identity verification, threat detection, and vetting have really led us to this point. And so we're incredibly excited to roll this out. We do not believe that we have to choose between security and passenger seamlessness and passenger efficiency. So we believe we can have both, and we're extremely excited to roll this out nationwide.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are excited about that. As far as the time frame goes, when can we see some of these changes start taking place? And what does this say about TSA's commitment and investment into our nation's military?
Yeah, absolutely. So you'll see this. This took effect last week on the military side of the House. And again, we're incredibly committed, this administration, the Secretary, we recognize the sacrifices that these honorable men and women have made, again, to uphold our way of life, our values, and our freedoms. And so this is a small but really important token for us, again, to ease the burden of travel for them and their families. We're going to continue, as long as this administration is around, to protect and preserve this program in perpetuity, possibly expand it depending on demand and airport cooperation and the like. But again, we're incredibly excited about this new initiative, as well as the shoes off announcement. This really just underscores, again, this administration's commitment to really leaning in, embracing technology, innovation, as well as security. We believe we can have all those three things in concert together, working hand in hand.
Acting Deputy Administrator, TSA Senior Official Adam Stahl, thank you again for joining us with that announcement and the information. And a lot of military families, we have so many in the Charlotte area that use our airport, are going to appreciate that. Thanks for your time.
Thanks so much.
At 10:35 right now in the Live Impact studio, we're going to get you back to that NOAA virtual press conference and their meeting as we take you, I believe it's out of Sunrise, Florida, South Florida, but we do know that Representative Jim Clyburn from South Carolina, the Low Country, including Charleston, is there as well, representing part of the Carolinas, of course, affected by some of the severe weather. Cuts to NOAA and what that means. Let's go back to it here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus.
And research colleagues work closely with other NOAA operational partners, cooperative institute researchers, other government researchers, and academia to utilize these unique observations to develop statistical and numerical guidance products for the National Hurricane Center. Through bipartisan support, Congress has repeatedly supported this approach, most recently passing the Weather Research and Forecasting Innovation Act in 2017, Public Law 11525. They stipulated that NOAA should maintain a project to improve hurricane forecasting, the Hurricane Forecasting Improvement Program that began in 2009 in response to particularly deadly and damaging hurricanes in 2004 and 2005. Since its inception, the Hurricane Forecast Improvement Program has dramatically decreased forecast error. Track and wind speed errors have declined by about 40% in less than 15 years. The proposed budget cuts.
Just putting a little pause there for a quick second as we are watching live pictures here at the Pentagon. You can see Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. They are to meet this morning after a number of meetings with the president between Netanyahu and President Trump earlier this week. Now meeting with Secretary of Defense Hegseth this morning in the Pentagon. We are waiting to see if there's going to be any kind of joint press conference or media opportunity. If that happens, we'll bring it to you here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. But just wanted to take a quick peek here as we can see that the two leaders are going to have a meeting this morning at the Pentagon in D.C. All right, we will go back to that virtual meeting.
And the characterization of these devastating storms will obstruct the development of new forecasting approaches, including those utilizing artificial intelligence, as they require research expertise for development and training. In a nutshell, these impacts are going to severely hamper the development of hurricane forecast guidance products that the National Hurricane Center has found so useful. And I'll thank you for that time.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Marks. I appreciate all of our experts joining us. And Mike, we're happy to take questions.
Okay, so if you have a question, please use the raise your hand function. We will open your mic and you'll introduce yourself and say your question. So we're going to call on Action News Jax, the CBS Fox affiliate in Jacksonville.
Hey, Jake Stofan, Action News Jax, a reporter over here. Was curious, I was kind of hearing sort of two things. One, the short-term concerns in NOAA's ability to forecast hurricanes, let's say this season, and also the more long-term concerns about the lack of, improving forecasts over the, coming years. Could you maybe lay out, and whoever wants to take this is free to do so, some of the specific cuts that raise concerns about the ability for people to trust hurricane forecasts, let's say this season?
Which of our experts wants to take that?
I can start,
James,
if you like. So there are a couple things I think that concern me for this year. First of all, many of the National Weather Service forecast offices are not able to send up the weather balloons twice a day because of short staffing. Now, these can leave holes in the data that initialize our computer models. Now, many of the holes will get filled by other types of data, satellite data, and we don't necessarily know in advance which of these data gaps are going to be crucial. But if you have a hurricane approaching Florida or South Carolina, East Coast, and perhaps we have a weather system coming across the U.S. that might either turn that storm harmlessly out to sea or allow it to continue to moving west. Those data over the continental U.S., those weather balloons, could create a poor initial analysis in the models that could lead us to miss one of those turns. And it's going to be really hard to know in advance. So what that does is it just lessens the confidence that we have that any particular forecast this season is going to be accurate, because we don't know when those holes are going to turn out to be significant. The one other point is that the staffing, I'm worried about when we have an event that the WFOs are not going to have enough people to talk to emergency managers and to help them make decisions about what's happening at the local level. The Hurricane Center is pretty well staffed, but the Weather Service forecast offices aren't. And there's so much communication that goes on over a 2 and 3 day period between EMs and the forecast offices to help them prepare. It's not like you can staff up for an overnight thing. These events are longer. And so I'm worried about that too.
thank you. Dr. Atlas, did you have something to add? Can we unmute Dr. Atlas, please?
James gave a great answer. What I wanted to say was, when I first moved to South Florida, I went into the Florida Keys where my son lived, and my wife and I asked everyone we met, would they evacuate if a Category 5 hurricane was forecast to hit right here? And to a person, they said no. And what was needed was increasing the confidence in our hurricane forecasts. And that's what we've worked so hard for in NOAA research. Improving the accuracy means that people don't get overwarned anywhere near as much. We want to increase it even further so that people will take necessary actions and that people will evacuate. But the confidence levels increase tremendously as a result of the hurricane research. We don't want to lose that by having our accuracy decrease.
Can I just?
Yeah, so go ahead.
Absolutely the expert. No, go ahead.
I know what I was going to say, immediate response this year. I know that the Hurricane Research Division has lost about 25 to 30% of its staff, and probably 50% of the staff that would be on the research aircraft. And so that's going to be a major obstacle for us staffing that aircraft. And that'll mean likely less airborne Doppler radar data, less drops on support for the National Hurricane Center observations this year. And as James pointed out, those observations are kind of critical to the forecast guidance products from the numerical models. So that's an immediate impact. The further out you go, if the budget that exists that was just passed, that'll all go away. There will be nobody there. This year, we're likely to have half as many and maybe some possible misses, but next year there'll be nobody.
I just want to clarify that the proposed cuts to closing all of the the NOAA research labs are proposed by the president's budget for FY26, but the Appropriations Committee has not acted on those. So part of the reason that we're here is to help make sure people know what the devastating impact of those closures would be, and to make sure that we can encourage our colleagues in Congress, particularly on those on the Appropriations Committee, like Congresswoman Frankel and Congressman Clyburn and myself, to urge our Republican colleagues to not go along with the president's proposals, because those would be devastating.
Do we have another question?
I have a question. I just don't know how to raise my hand in the platform. I don't know if you can hear me.
Who is this?
Jennifer Vasquez, Local 10 News in Miami. I'm just not quite sure how to raise my hand on the cell phone version of the Zoom, but
we can hear you.
You go ahead. We can hear you.
perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, so you just now addressed one part of the question that I wanted to drill down on. So I was looking at something that says in 2026, and it says, quote, NOAA will close the Atlantic Oceanographic and Meteorological Laboratory. So two related questions. One, can you be really clear on that laboratory in Miami? What exactly functions out of that and the impact that would have to us regionally of hurricane preparedness if that were to close? And then two, and I think you just addressed it, has that already happened with the big, beautiful bill, or is there still some wiggle room to keep that laboratory existing?
I'd like to take this one as the former director of AOML.
Yes.
So AOML performs functions that are critical for hurricane forecasting. Some of the functions are operational in nature, such as manning the Hurricane Hunter flights for NOAA, processing the tail Doppler radar data and the dropzone data, and also innovating the aerial drones that are used. That's from an AOML scientist, and also launching ocean gliders to give us additional measurements that help us with intensity forecasting. The research that goes on at AOML is crucial to maintaining and improving the hurricane model forecast accuracy. AOML and its partners developed first the HWRF model, which showed tremendous ability to improve hurricane intensity forecasting, and the HAFS model, which is the current model that NOAA is using. All of the improvements that we want to make to that model to increase accuracy even further and to extend the lead time on hurricane warnings and forecasts would not occur if AOML is eliminated.
Two things on the process to answer your process question. The president has proposed the closure of all of the NOAA research laboratories across the country. There are a dozen of them, and that includes the major one that we have in Miami. And what's important to understand is that this is in the fiscal year 26 appropriations process. So the president has proposed the closure in his budget, but we have not yet acted on the Commerce, Justice, Science Appropriations Bill in the House, and they have not yet done that in the Senate. However, even if the Republicans, who are in the majority in both houses, decide to not go along with, and hopefully that they won't, to not go along with those proposed cuts, with those proposed closures, they could reduce them dramatically in the budget and only leave them, partially funded. And quite frankly, even if the Republicans fully funded the NOAA research labs across the country, President Trump has really not respected the Article 1 responsibility of Congress for appropriations and has rescinded funding. That's why we have a 20 to 40, a huge reduction in force in the NOAA research centers already that we've been talked about. So he could just unilaterally reduce staff, fire people, close partial operations. He's really shown a penchant for just deciding to not spend funds as Congress intended. And then we pursue them with lawsuits, and some have been successful and some have not been. But the bottom line is that however the potential whatever potential exists for the closure of these vital research labs, it is going to have devastating consequences, and we need to make sure that we prevent that from happening at all costs.
Let's go to another question from Action News Jacksonville.
Hey, it's Jake again. I think this question kind of bounces off that last one, and it's just, I just wanted to maybe get some clarity on what the proposed cuts are versus what cuts have already happened. It sounded like you're saying some of the staffing cuts, the 20 to 40% in the NOAA research facilities that has materialized, and then the closing of the research labs. But there's also, talk about the flights, the maintenance of the aircraft. If you could just kind of go through and say, this has happened, this is what could happen, just kind of for clarity.
Well, our experts can give you a sense. Our experts can give you a sense of what's already happened.
Frank, you want to take that?
Yeah. So in the Hurricane Research Division at AOML, we lost a number of our early new hires when they kind of cut people who were still on probation. Probably lost about 3 or 4 then. Then we lost another 3 or 4 to early retirement that was offered, some key personnel, and some others took other jobs just because of what was going on. Right now, we have very few people with expertise or experience who have flown in missions and can direct missions and can work on the aircraft. We're down to about 5 or 6 of those people. Matter of fact, as a volunteer, I volunteered to go if they need me. So that's how desperate it's getting. In terms of hurricane research, I mentioned this is 69 years of this. This is unique. Nowhere in the world exists the type of observations that NOAA or the U.S. Weather Bureau and now NOAA have collected. It is a unique place. It's the only place that has this kind of information. And that's why I mentioned it's critical if you're going to train artificial intelligence. It's going to be more than manpower. It's brain power, gray matter. It's really the people that make the research work more than the tools that we use.
I also just want to underscore that what has already happened, and the experts can correct me if I'm wrong, is that at the NOAA facilities in South and Central Florida, they are currently understaffed as a result of these reductions in force by 20 to 40%. And the big ugly bill canceled $200 million more that was already funded for improved weather forecasting and community resiliency projects that are designed to stave off the impact of natural disasters. So those things have already happened. And then the proposed closure of all of the NOAA research labs has been proposed, could not end up being included in the Commerce, Justice, Science bill, but Republicans thus far have done much of what President Trump has proposed in his initial proposed budgeting.
Let's go to Joan Murray from CBS Miami.
Can you hear me?
Yes, hi, Joan.
For you, Congresswoman, so just so we're clear, these are proposed cuts. It is not part of the big spending bill that just passed, correct? And you have yet to vote on this particular allocation for the closure of these particular facilities. Is that correct?
Yes, that
Okay.
part is correct, but there has already been a massive reduction in personnel at the Weather Service, Hurricane Research, and additionally $200 million in cuts to improved weather forecasting was in the bill, the big ugly bill that President Trump just signed.
Okay.
So
And
these
go ahead.
closures, Joan, are proposed, but they're in the president's budget. And if the Republicans follow their habit thus far, since we've been marking up appropriations bills, I'm gravely concerned that they will just go along with this. So
And the cuts that passed in the current bill mainly affect the staffing at the National Weather Service offices. Is that correct?
I need our experts to answer that question.
The cuts currently in place.
So the cuts that have already happened at the Weather Service occurred first due to the probationary employees being fired 4 months ago, or February, whenever that was. Then there were these buyouts that triggered a wave of early retirements. So those staff cuts occurred before this most recent bill passed. Those cuts were the ones that were responsible for the loss of the weather balloon data. Those are the ones that were responsible for the National Hurricane Center, for example, not being able to go out and train emergency managers on site this spring. Very important training that they do annually that they couldn't travel for this year. So those are the kinds of things that have happened already, not related to this bill that just passed.
And so could somebody?
On the $200 million, we'll get you the details on that.
Okay, so what just passed is what you're saying?
$200 million is a lot, so I want to make sure I give you accurate information.
I have one other question for the scientist. So I have read about the weather balloons and the inability to launch. Has that happened already in South Florida regarding any storms that have already appeared? Has there been no ability to do weather balloons or send in the planes? Has any of that been impacted by what is in place already?
I don't believe there have been any missed launches in South Florida. The losses are concentrated in the Midwest, but I'll point out that when it comes to hurricane forecasting, it really doesn't matter. Those upstream observations are going to affect, when they're missed, will affect 2-day hurricane forecast, 3-day hurricane forecast. So something that's coming, it's getting time to issue watches and warnings. It's probably even worse to lose the observations in the Midwest than maybe it is in Key West.
All right, thank you very much.
Now let's go to Wendy Grossman from 610 WIOD in South Florida.
Hi, thanks for taking the question. And not to politicize the tragedy, but the flooding, getting back to the flooding in Texas, I know the National Weather Service says that it did have adequate staffing and resources to tell people to get out of the way, but obviously there's been a lot of deaths. How much do you think is to blame on the fact that there have been cuts to these offices locally? And, that they weren't able to warn the camp to get the kids out in times and things like that?
Well, I'll make it easier for them, and Congressman Clyburn, you can chime in as well. As I mentioned in my remarks, it appears that the National Weather.
Again, you have been watching live a virtual meeting regarding the cuts to NOAA, as well as what's happening now, a hearing on confirming the new director for NOAA. Want to let you know that South Carolina Department of Health confirming 1 case of measles in upstate South Carolina. That resident is now isolating at home, and also confirming that that person did not have their vaccination. So more on that coming up on WCNC Charlotte. Also, if you want to continue watching the NOAA virtual meeting, that is on our secondary channel, and we are waiting for Texas officials for the very latest in Kerrville, Texas. Charlotte Today is up.